Шановні колеги, ми продовжуємо нашу роботу, і наразі Таміла Ташева, координатор Crimea-SOS, нам повідомить про ситуацію.
We continue our work. Now here in occupation, local population and IDPs from discrimination toward understanding. Tamila Tasheva, Crimea-SOS. Good afternoon, esteemed colleagues. I will correct it a little bit. I will not be talking about situation in Crimea. For a year we have IDPs in our country from the beginning of annexation of Crimea that took place last year in the end of February, and now we have more than 1,200,000 IDPs in the country. Out of them, 25,000 people from Crimea, and most of IDPs are from the east. And we, as the organization that has been working all the time with IDPs, we started observing the trends when, starting from the end of July, people started treating the IDPs not like they were treating them in the beginning. Not like the first phase of events in the East. Then the IDPs were welcomed, people were helping them, were bringing hundreds of tons of humanitarian aid, different NGOs, volunteer initiatives were helping. But in this period, starting from July, beginning of August, we started observing other trends. We now see when people would come to us, we would ask them, why aren't you employed, how to help you with the job. Most people were saying that no one wants to hire them. When we asked, where do you live, are you renting the housing, most people were saying it's very difficult for them to find housing. When people ask them where are they from, they say they are from the east. People don't want to lease the housing to them. The situation was better with people from Crimea because people from Crimea were perceived better. But now situation is the same. There's this attitude to IDPs from the east and from Crimea. And our initiative with the assistance of the Canadian Foundation, we decided to organize a monitoring why there is this attitude to IDPs. We started to monitor the mass media in 5 regions. We selected Kyiv, Lviv, Kherson, Vinnytsia, and Kharkiv for monitoring. Kharkiv is one of the biggest regions that accommodates, hosts the IDPs because they are the border region, and now there are more than 120,000 IDPs from the east who live there. We analyzed all the mass media, and we were talking to local population, to NGOs, public sector, non-public sector, what they're saying. And at the entrance, there is a report that we have made. I will not tell you about it in detail, but will tell you about some trends, talking about the mass media. Half of the mass media which we analyzed, their attitude to IDPs is neutral. Their publications are of quite neutral nature. Others are either positive publications or negative publications. But when we are talking about negative publications, some of them, and you will see that in the report, I will not be talking about percentage, but some of them are very negative. When people mention, for example, that the IDP from the Lugansk region killed his neighbor and went back to ATO zone. Why we believe this shouldn't be mentioned in mass media? Because any person in our society, not just in our society, can kill someone and move to some other region. You shouldn't be talking about just this specific IDP. The second trend for mass media is that this topic is not very much disseminated in mass media. When we analyzed all these regions, we saw that most of the publications are in Kharkiv region because most of the IDPs live there, and that is why they write about IDPs more than others. Talking about Vinnytsia region, they write less about IDPs because they have fewer IDPs. Also, we see that these publications have a certain negative context. The state does not help IDPs. Mostly volunteer organizations help, and we as a volunteer organization, we can agree to that. But on the other hand, that does not help the whole situation in the country, because if IDPs are thinking that no one but volunteer organizations help them, then there will be a certain social tension in this society because of these things. I will not talk a lot about mass media. I will tell about what's the attitude to IDPs. We did we measured that in June. We started this monitor in January. We started the monitoring in January and ended in the beginning of March. We see that there is, in the past there was a lot of neutral attitude. Now there's more positive attitude. I don't know what it is related to. It's difficult for me to tell that, but now mostly we see that there is a positive attitude, but in some regions, like in Lviv, in the background, and that's one of the main accusations, that they do not go to fight, they move to the Western Ukraine, and they are accused in not wanting to work and not getting mobilized. Like in Lviv, the local population treats them very negatively. We asked more than 900 respondents in these regions, and we see certain trends. And in this monitoring, we selected several special topics. One of them is renting housing, another one is employment, one more is attitude of children to their schoolmates, for example. Also, the attitude to Roma population and Crimean Tatars. Talking about renting the housing, I've mentioned that. We asked the real estate specialists, the IDPs themselves, about 80% of real estate specialists. We talked to many of them. They were saying that there is a certain biased attitude to IDPs as soon as the person learns that the person that wants to lease housing is from Donetsk region, then they don't want to lease housing to them. 80% of realtors told us that, and when we asked what is it related to, one thing is that these people, you cannot rely on them. They can leave this apartment and not pay, because once they dealt with some people who were not very decent, but when we would ask But do you, for example, know some of these IDPs? Do you know some family that would suffer from these actions? People were mostly saying no, and we see that these trends are not directly related to specific cases. They have not seen them. As to jobs, we talk to the IDPs or to the organizations which are trying to find jobs for people. The data they gave us, most of the most people are happy to give the job to the IDPs, and they were saying that we see the trend when the employers stimulate the IDPs, they want to give jobs to IDPs. We talk to people who have who have more than 100 companies that hire IDPs. Talking about attitude to children, talking about Kiev, for example. In Kiev, we talked to 54 child, out of them 9 IDPs. Most of them said that we are interested in these children from eastern regions or from Crimea. We do not treat them differently. These 9 children said that we were received well, but we saw some negative trends when 6 children said that we do not perceive them well, or they were saying we don't care about these children, we just don't pay attention to them. And we understand that the child, it's not the child who says that, but we understand that these are the things coming from the families. As to Roma population, we worked with organizations that were hosting them. The biggest region is Kharkiv region, and initially when Roma started leaving the eastern parts of Ukraine, that was from Slavyansk, when the so-called leader of so-called DNR, Igor Girkin, said that Romas are connected with drug business and we have to move them away from our city. Then the Roma started actively moving away from these regions. But most of the Romas, they don't have higher education. Many of them do not have documents certifying their personality, and that negative attitude is just strengthening. And we see that Roma organizations registered that the IDPs of Roma origin, they are sitting either in shelters or in houses which are sheltered all the time, and that trend is very negative. Talking about Crimean Tatars, when the first wave of the IDPs started from Crimea, in the beginning the attitude to Crimean people, especially to Crimean Tatars, was very good. There was a trend that these are our brothers, we want to help them. Now this attitude has not changed to Crimean Tatars. The attitude is very good. We see such trends especially in Kherson region and in Lviv. These are the regions which hosted most of Crimean Tatars, and they have the most tolerant attitude to Crimean Tatars. We were in Lviv, for example. They are discussing the topic of opening the mosque, and about 51% of the respondents, out of 51%, about 40% said that their attitude to having the mosque in Lviv, which shows really very good trend and very tolerant attitude to Crimean Tatars and other religious communities. I've used a lot of time. That is all. In principle, if you have any questions, I will be happy to answer. If you have any questions about the situation of IDPs now, what are the problems of IDPs, I will be happy to answer any questions I have. There was a round table here. There was a round table in the Cabinet of Ministers. The year of occupation, what has been done? Has anything been done? And then I understand that the attitude to Crimean Tatars is more tolerant here than in Crimea, where they are discriminated against. What can you tell about that? Answering your first question, a lot hasn't been done, but a lot has been done. The main thing that has been done is that the topic of Crimea and Crimean Tatars is all the time mentioned by our leaders. The president always is saying that we will never forget about Crimea. He's talking about that at different international events. What hasn't been done, there's no strategy developed on how to return Crimea back and how to work with those citizens who are staying there in Crimea. Because you said correctly, the situation with people who are there is very difficult. The attitude to Crimean Tatars is here much better than the attitude of occupational Russian authorities in Crimea. We did not expect anything from these occupational authorities. We understood that as soon as Russian Federation is in Crimea, we will see only negative attitude, and that is why there are dozens of people who disappeared, and those people who are not allowed to enter Crimea, Rifat Chubarov, Mustafa Dzhemilev. That is why we have the criminal persecutions of the leaders of Crimean Tatars. I have a question. Could you please tell is there any connection between the economic situation in the country and the tolerance to IDPs? Yes. That was one of the trends, and that is what local communities are saying, that the IDPs, they want to get same benefits as the local population. Like in Kharkiv, more than 120,000 people arrived, but the number of jobs wasn't increased. There's no more places to stay at, and many people say that now local people cannot get jobs, even though this is not true. We need to look at the IDPs not just negatively, but we need to understand that this is a big positive thing. And it's not mentioned in mass media, and the final consumer doesn't know that the IDPs open actively the companies, they create jobs or they take positions that the local population wouldn't like to take. They close the niches of low paid salaries, and that is good for the employer. But on the other hand, that's negative because this is the attitude to ITPs. But on the other hand, that means big chances for the country because only increasing
Производительності праці.
will be able to save the country. If our companies work, this will be very good.
Дуже так коротко сказали про те, що
You also mentioned that you were also asking children, but non-tolerance among children, because children do not adapt, they say what they think, and this intolerance is very big. Or maybe that is just my observation, maybe I was not lucky. What is to be done with that? We need to work with that, but we have not seen many of such trends. We asked people in 5 regions, in kindergartens and in schools, and most children were saying that we do not care. Their interests are very similar to ours, but there were some trends. If we just take Kiev as an example, when there is a negative attitude and they say that we ignore them, we don't want to see them. And so I mentioned in the beginning that our selection is not representative. We asked only 900 people, but we can see certain trends.
Я просто питала, як що з цим робити, чи це має бути державна політика, бо це те, що має дуже великий лаг між тим, як діє.
There's a big lag
Я дуже дякую
there.
вам.
Thank you.
Я сподіваюся, що, можливо, ви
I hope that you will
підприємців, які зможуть
bring some successful businessmen to us who will show
про допомогу, але можуть
that not just the IDPs are requesting about assistance,